Oh, didn't see you there. What's that? You want to learn how to play Mechanoids, the self-running RPG? Well, you've certainly come to the right place. Why don't we get started by creating our characters? The first thing you'll need to decide is your Mechanoid's form and function. The form is the model of Mechanoid you choose to play. Form determines your attribute values, your HP, and your armor. The demo version contains 4 playable forms: standard, heavy, light, and computational. For this explanation, I will choose Type 1, Standard. After choosing a form, write all the associated information in the proper spots in the character sheet. So for instance, our Type 1 has 10 HP, 300 energy capacity, 3 strength, 2 dexterity, 3 speed, 2 intellect, 3 awareness, and 3 charisma. The modifiers for each attribute are the attribute values -2. So our strength here, +1, plus or minus 0, +1, plus or minus 0, +1, and +1. As you can see, the standard Mechanoid is fairly well rounded. Now our standard Mechanoid also has 5 stored item slots. So for stored items, it goes there. Type 1 Mechanoid also has light armor, which gives it an armor value of 12 and armor durability of 20. Now we need to choose a function. The function is the purpose your Mechanoid was built for. For purposes of gameplay, your Mechanoid's function determines your starting skills and equipment. Just choose a function from the rulebook and choose your equipment as listed with it from the equipment section of the rulebook. Now our fellow here, his function is going to be an engineer. An engineer can choose any of 2 skills in this list: engineering, mechanics, electronics, scavenging, and metalworking. We are going to give him electronics and mechanics. He also gets 2 of either Scrapper's Toolkit, Electrician's Toolkit, or Mechanics Toolkit. We are going to choose both the Electronics Toolkit and the Mechanics Toolkits. And while we're on the subject of inventory, let's talk about how that works in this game. The inventory system in Mechanoids uses inventory slots. Each item takes up a certain number of inventory slots. Unless otherwise stated, each item takes up 1 slot. Mechanoids have the ability to store a certain number of items inside their own bodies. These are the stored inventory slots. Other items need to be stored externally. Your character begins with a pouch that grants you 5 additional inventory slots, which we will write here. And you choose to place your starting items either in your stored or regular inventory slots. Now our 2 items, we're going to place them both in stored. Each one takes up 1 slot. He also gets 1 common melee weapon. So we would go down to the equipment section of the book, look at the common melee weapons, and choose which one we want. We're going to give him a sword. Now would also be a decent time to discuss what are mods. Well, given that your character is in fact a robot, it can be modified to give it new abilities both in and out of combat. In our case, the engineer begins the game with 1 utility mod, which we are going to give him a lamp. Now that we have our characters made, it's time to talk about the game world. The game world of Mechanoids is split up into cities and dungeons. And since both the demo and the full game have you starting in a city, let's talk about cities first. On the first page of each city is a description of the city, a list of areas in that city, and 3 sets of boxes will be on most. One will track what state the city is in. Certain cities will change states depending on what has been done in the campaign. During the demo, the capital city only has a singular state, but other cities will have more. One set of boxes tracks the mood of the city. The mood represents how the people of that city view your characters. If the mood is high, they are viewed very favorably. If the mood is low, they are viewed unfavorably and may come into contact with law enforcement. The last set of boxes marks which encounters within the city have been completed. Let's start with an example of one of these places, in this case, the market district. Each place starts with a description to be read aloud, followed by an observation action value. Players immediately make an awareness roll when they enter a new area. But what's an awareness roll? An awareness roll is a type of attribute roll in this game. Well, what are attribute rolls? Well, attribute rolls are the uses of your character's attributes to perform different tasks. Sometimes the actions list will require attribute rolls, like for instance, the option to pickpocket the crowd requires a dexterity roll above 12. An attribute roll is a roll of one 20-sided die, or referred to as 1d20 from now on, plus the attribute modifier for the attribute listed with it. Some actions, none listed here, but some, will have an energy cost, which you pay to perform that action. Whether or not the action is successful, you still pay the energy cost. If you don't have enough energy, well, you can't take that action. Now you might notice most of the things on here say that it leads to an encounter of a given number. Well, let's talk about encounters. When it says to go to an encounter, you turn to that encounters page in the book, listed next to the encounter's number, and read it. Encounters represent events that happen to your players as you interact with the game world. Now, as you probably guessed, each encounter starts with a description to be read aloud, followed by a series of actions you can perform. As usual, some of these actions will require attribute rolls and/or energy to perform. Some of them further an encounter and have stage numbers written next to them. In which case, you move on to that stage if any player takes that action. Some actions will also say end of encounter in their outcomes. In which case, if any player takes that action, the encounter ends, and it is over for all players, and all players return to the location they were in when the encounter began. Now, because some encounters will require combat, now is a good time to explain just how that works in this game. These are range bands. These represent distance between combatants in combat. There are 5 ranges: melee, short, medium, long, and extreme. Melee range means 2 enemies are occupying the same range band. So to use a melee weapon, you must be in the same range band as your opponent, with each range band higher indicating one range band further. The players will all begin combat in the same range band unless otherwise stated, and the combatants will all begin in their listed range band as well. What I have set up here would be that the combatants start at medium range because they are 2 range bands away. So now that we have it set up, let's talk about how combat works. To start combat, each player rolls 1d20. Also roll 1d20 for each combatant. These are your initiative numbers for this combat sequence. Players and NPC combatants take their turns in initiative order from highest to lowest. If there is a tie, the players decide the order. On your turn, you can take 2 actions, a main action and a secondary action. During your main action, you have 5 options in addition to any alternative actions the encounter or dungeon room may provide. The main actions are attack, attack focus, dodge focus, move, or flee. To attack, choose a weapon you have equipped that you want to attack with. Then roll 1d20 and add your character's dexterity modifier if you're using a melee weapon, or awareness modifier if you're using a ranged weapon. If the result is above a 7, the attack hits. Roll for damage of that weapon. If the attack hits, but the hit roll is below the target's armor value, the attack will damage the target's armor durability. If the hit roll is above the target's armor value, the damage is dealt to the target's HP. If any entity has its HP reduced to 0, it is rendered non-functional. If you choose attack focus, nothing happens this turn, but you gain a +5 bonus to your roll to hit on your next turn. If you chose dodge focus, similarly, nothing will happen this turn, but all rolls to hit you will have a -3 penalty until your next turn. If you choose to move, you may move one range band closer or further to an opponent. Lastly, for the main actions, you can flee. If you flee, you leave the encounter or the dungeon room you're in. If you attempt to flee while in melee range of a combatant, you must make a speed roll. You make a speed roll for the combatant as well. If your roll is higher than that of the combatant, you are successful. If not, you remain in combat. Secondary actions are considerably more limited. You can move the same way, or you can also make a secondary attack. For this, you can use any equipped weapon that you didn't use to attack during your main action, but this attack will have a -5 penalty on the hit roll. Certain items and mods will also allow you for different secondary action options. You keep repeating this, going turn by turn, until either all players or all combatants have fled or been rendered non-functional. If you render a combatant non-functional, you get to look at the list of loot associated with it and pick one piece of loot to scavenge from it. Now let's say for a second that in combat, you guys won, but one of your friends has been rendered non-functional. Do you roll up a new character sheet and scrap it? Not necessarily. When your Mechanoid reaches 0 HP, roll 1d20 +1 per level of armor you have. So +1 for light, +2 for medium, and +3 for heavy. If the result is below a 6, well then your Mechanoid's mind core was destroyed and it is in fact permanently gone. However, as long as this mind core is intact, it can be installed into a brand new body. Remember, you are a robot. Using 10 Mechanoid parts, a medium power core, a Meg's toolkit, and a roll of 16 or higher on 1d20, you can restore a non-functional Mechanoid to function. However, if you fail the roll, it not only consumes the parts, but requires another roll to see if the mind core remains intact. Now that we've pretty much covered cities and encounters, we've really only got one thing left to discuss: dungeons. Dungeons are the real adventure part of this game, with areas to explore, battle monsters, and gather up loot. Dungeons are split into discrete rooms, each with its own challenges. As you probably guessed, each room in a dungeon has a description to be read out loud, and a list of actions to be performed in that room, as well as the same observation action value you would get when you entered a new area in a city. Some rooms in a dungeon have special modifiers listed with them, and some contain combatants to fight. At the end of each room description is a list of obstacles and combatants in that room. When the state of an obstacle changes, as in this case, if the locked door gets unlocked or otherwise removed, you check that box. Similarly, the boxes for combatants get checked if those combatants have been defeated. Obstacles and combatants retain that state if the room is re-entered. Each dungeon ultimately leads to a boss chamber. Defeating that boss completes the dungeon, and players either decide to make their way back through, or they can just instantly move back to the entrance. Either way, completed dungeons cannot be re-entered. And that, along with the rulebook, should be all you need to get started on your Mechanoids adventure. Have fun and happy gaming!